Hello and welcome to part 2 of this lesson. I'm Mr. M again. And if you were with us with part 1, or if you haven't seen part 1, go view part 1 first. But in part 1, we went through our half hole and our force hole, right? We made these two strips, which are both considered holes. Now for this third part, I want you to make 3 different hole strips, fraction strips, like this fourth one, like this half one. All right, so if you need to pause the video to do so, you may. But I want you to make a fraction strip with the following fractions. I want you to make one that represents thirds, so 1/3. I want you to make a fraction strip that represents sixths, so 6, so 1/6. And I want you guys to make a fraction strip to represent eighths, so 1/8. Take a couple minutes to do that. If you have the strips, use them. Try to figure out how many places there need. So if there's, for example, with the halves, there were 2 total pieces. So in thirds, how many total pieces are there if it's 1/3? So take a couple minutes. Do those fraction strips. When you've done those, you may unpause the video. So once you've done all that, you should have a third fraction strip kind of looking like that. You should have a 6th fraction strip. Sorry, let me unfold this. Kind of looking like this. And you should have an 8th fraction strip kind of looking like this, right? So those are what your fraction strips should look like. One important thing to go over is whether we're looking at 1/3 or 1/6 or even 1/2. These are what we like to call base fractions or unit fractions, all right? These, basically any fraction with a numerator of 1 is going to be considered our base fractions, right? So half, a third, a fourth, those are what we would consider those easy fractions, right? And last thing I want to point out, when we have a half, or actually let's take all of them, right? We have our eighths, we have our fourths, we have our sixths. If we take all of the fraction strips, put them up against each other, they all equal wholes. They equal the same thing, which is the number above itself. They all equal a whole, which is 1, right? 1 whole. Just to emphasize that more. Yeah. Another thing to mention is that even with these strips, remember, if you have it with paper, it's kind of hard to look. But if you have the printout, all of these parts should be equal, right? So you have to have the same part with your whole. So for example, if it's 1/6, you need 6 equal pieces of the whole, right? If you have a half, you need 2 equal pieces, right? Remember with fractions, whenever we're looking at these strips, they need to be equal, and that's very important. So go ahead, take some time, play around with these fraction strips. Try to see what different fractions equal different fractions. So for example, you can play around with the 6. How many 6 pieces does it take to equal 1/2, right? So you could play around with it. Does 2/6 equal a half? You can see the half piece is bigger, right? But yeah, you can just play around with these. It would also help you with your work that you have to do. So these fraction strips are here to help you, all right? You can play around with it, really experiment. And even if you want to create more fraction strips with different numbers, you can. So we didn't go over fifths. You could do fifths, you could do ninths, you could do tenths. You can really play around with it and do whatever you want to. That is the lesson, all right? If you need to go back to the video at any point for help, please do. If you need to ask for help, I'm sure you can find people to help you as well, all right? And with that, I'm Mr. M. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.